As Ken Hovind explains, time, space, and matter are...
This video was a mistake.
How many of the millions of miracle reports throughout history have you actually deeply investigated?
Well, how many of the thousands and thousands of reports of people seeing fairies have you actually properly investigated?
If God got himself involved, then where's the free will?
Have you read the Bible? That's what he did! That's his whole thing, is getting involved. Hello lovely people, my name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you are new. Questions for atheists. Theists pose questions online. A lot of the time it takes the form of, atheists can't answer this one question. And then those of us in the skeptic community jump on and say, hey bro, don't even worry, I know you're stressing about this. I can answer that. And then we all live happily ever after. I thought it was about time I did my bit and answered some more questions for atheists. Where do people ask their questions these days? On the TikTok. So that's what we're doing. Looking at this TikTok page, I'm a little bit concerned that some of the questions might be sarcastic. But no nice religious person is asking atheists questions just to take the piss. That would be rude. Real Lily J says, hey atheists, I have a question.
Hey atheists, I have a question. So you believe the universe is a coincidence and without a creator. But can this simple food be without a chef? How does that work?
I made a huge mistake. I guess this is a good example to start with because this is probably the number one question for atheists that I see on the internet. Even though it's stupid, the Watchmaker argument, or the Watchmaker analogy, is the original version of this, right? You don't believe this complex thing spawned without a creator, so why do you think this complex thing, human beings, life, the universe, whatever, could have spawned without a creator? And it's also one of the easiest to just pull apart and debunk, which is part of why I find it frustrating that is the main argument, question that I hear is this really tired, long debunked Watchmaker argument. It's really easy to refute, and I do it so often that I think I've done it in very recent memory because it's right in here as a building a house example, so that must have come up really recently. We know how chips are made. We have we have the history of chips. In fact, I could probably look it up. Belgians may have been the first to fry potato strips in the late 17th or 18th century. I guess this works better on the building argument, like a house argument, but for the sake of this chip, this potato fry, in this very specific instance, she should know how it came into existence, because there'll be a kitchen that serves them. We have a whole history of evidence for the origin of chips. We know how they're made. We could walk into the kitchen and see the oven and see the potatoes being chopped, whereas evidence for a creator who made the whole universe is not. There's nothing. So it's a really simple question for atheists to answer that kind of betrays our whole ideology, I suppose, if you want to talk about it like that, which is that we know how that food is made because we have evidence for it. We don't believe that somebody created the universe because there's no evidence for it. The end. Oh, the Lord's Giant. I feel like I've seen the Lord's Giant on YouTube. I feel like I've bookmarked his YouTube page before. I think this might be somebody that I know of. He's hoping to get some good answers out of his genuine questions for atheists. So let's listen to the questions.
For atheists. So typically whenever I see y'all critiquing the way that God possibly judges people, and especially whenever it comes to hell, often it's the eternal conscious torment version of hell.
Sure.
But, as I'm sure many of you already know, that's not the only view of hell within Christianity. It never has been historically, and it isn't still to this day. One of the other main Christian views of hell is that of annihilationism, where hell is essentially a place where the people who reject God, the people who God decides to send to hell, go there for a time, and then they're inevitably annihilated, completely removed from existence. So my question is really twofold. One, why is that never the version of hell that is critiqued?
Okay, I'll stop it there and just answer this. If I'm critiquing a version of hell, it's because it's what's being told to me. It's because it's what's being espoused by some Christian. And the Christian version of hell that is pretty much in every, if it ever comes up in some sort of evangelical video, it's the fire and brimstone version. I'm sorry, there is a second answer to that question, which is that as atheists, we don't believe in that. So we're only critiquing specific beliefs and parts of the Bible as they come up, you know, espoused by other people. Generally, unless we're actually talking about the Bible, which I do fairly often, so this might sound a bit counterintuitive, but like as a general atheist living my life, I'm not critiquing parts of the Bible or decisions made by some so-and-so here and there because I don't believe that it's an accurate historical record. I don't believe in God, I don't believe in hell, so I'm not going to critique God's decision to make hell like that unless it comes up in conversation like this. Okay, sorry, carry on.
Creationism is 100% the way that God chooses to judge.
Uh-huh.
Does that, in your eyes, make him more of a fair judge? I have no desire.
So he's asking whether we would think that it's fairer for God to just wipe out the people that are sent to hell, that are judged unworthy, versus eternal suffering and torment. And I think it's, well, maybe it's slightly fairer. I still think it's evil to sort of fairly arbitrarily, based on the rules in the Bible, send some people to eternal heaven to be with God in whatever form you believe in, to be with God for all eternity, and some people, some of those people being the friends and loved ones of those people, just wiped off the face of existence forever. How is that fair for those people in heaven who loved and cared for those people? I still think that's very evil and horrible.
For name-calling or pointless arguing. For any atheist that sees this, I genuinely want to know your opinion. Regardless, God bless.
Well, that was a nice ending. I hope I gave him my opinion in in a way that was fair. It does say a little something, and I'm guilty of contributing to this by, like, answering sarcastic, rude questions and therefore being sarcastic in response. It does say something that somebody who has a genuine question has to, like, top and tail it with, like, I don't want an argument. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not interested in name calling. I just really want to hear your opinion, which is really nice. It's just a shame that anyone feels like they have to say that. Let's just say a lot of the back and forth on both sides of theism and atheism sort of discussion and debate can be very unfriendly. But that was a nice guy with a question that I've never heard before that we were able to give our opinion on. That feels like an early win. If you're reading this, go buy my poetry book. Okay. This is 5 minutes, so we might have to limit our viewing of this.
God come from? The atheist's favorite question. The reason Christians are oftentimes stumped by this question too is because it implies a finite God, a God that was created or had a beginning. But of course, if he was created, then who created the thing that created God? And it's just a circle. Do you see the problem with that? As Kent Hovind explains, time, space, and matter are...
This video was a mistake. As Kent Hovind explains, that brings me to a really joyful point though. So Corey, thank you so much for bringing this up, because we just got Kent Hovind banned from YouTube again. Okay, yes, he has some tiny whatever channel. Before people start posting about that down below, I know, you don't need to highlight it, you don't need to tell anyone about it. If you know about it, quietly report it for ban evading. Don't spread the information down below or in my comments or anything, because then more people will go to it, it'll get more traction. At the moment, it has like no views and no followers, because his main channel was just once again removed because he's been ban evading. Instantly, I'm afraid I've lost all, not respect, I've not lost all respect for this person that I don't know, but I have no respect for their intellectual discussion on the topic of creation if they are going to quote Kent Hovind, somebody who is, even in the most fringe circles of creationist evangelism, is rejected for being stupid and horrible and dishonest and ridiculous. I'm just going to click away because it's 5 minutes and it opened with, as Kent Hovind says, so sorry. I'm really sorry, Corey. Capturing Christianity has 3 more questions for atheists.
3 more questions for atheists. Here is number 1. Do you believe that our beliefs ought to be proportioned to the evidence?
Yes.
So should we only really believe something if we've got evidence in favor of it? Number 2.
I mean, do I think that that's how you should feel? No. I think that you should believe based on things like your core values and your culture and what's important to you. I don't necessarily think that you need to believe based on the evidence. That is how I function and how most atheists would regard like spiritual questions. In my dream world, are most things evidence-based? Yes. Being realistic as a human being who has this crazy brain that we struggle to understand, that is driven by, like, a lot of the time emotion and, you know, like, intuition, I don't think it's reasonable to expect everything to be evidence-based. I think then we're getting into being a Vulcan territory. I would think that the best approach to kind of spiritual investigation is to combine your spirituality, your good feeling, your, the traditions and culture with an evidence and historical-based approach. You can be a Christian who has absolute faith in the existence of a God and still have an evidence-based approach to the Bible. And if history says, and all the historical evidence says, this specific story didn't happen that way, that should affect your belief. It should really be a combination of evidence and faith, belief, how you view the world, because we don't view the world in an objectively evidence-based way. We don't have the time or the energy. But I think evidence should be a part of your faith journey.
Number 2 is, if we could verify that some miracle actually occurred, would that give us a reason to think that God exists? And again, this is contingent on whether or not we could actually verify that the miracle happened. All right.
It depends on the miracle. In a sense, verifiable miracles do happen in the sense that things happen that people believe are miracles. I feel like medicine is the best example of this, where you have, say, people in comas that the medical community is near 100% certain will never wake up, and then they wake up. For a religious family, that's a miracle. It verifiably happened. My view would be that, something scientific occurred here that maybe was extremely unlikely, or we didn't understand or couldn't have predicted. For them, that's a miracle. So it really depends on what the miracle is. The Catholic miracles are all like statues of the Virgin Mary crying. If we verified that wasn't an environmental factor, like, some sort of leak or condensation or whatever it always turns out to be, if we verified that we really... Well, how could you verify that? If we eliminated all possibilities other than it's a miracle, I would still say we don't know what caused that. Even if that was compelling enough to say, okay, that's a miracle for you, what connects that to the Christian God? And which version of the Christian God? Is it, oh my God, now I'm going to become a Baptist. Oh, actually, I should be a Methodist. There's such a huge leap between those things. I did a video about it. After a couple of years ago, I went to Napoli. It was beautiful, and I went at the time when Saint Gennaro's blood, allegedly his blood, collected in an ampule. It is not an officially recognised Catholic miracle. It's not officially recognised by the Vatican, but it is allowed and accepted, and people were going up, and we could see it. The blood is supposed to liquefy, or like once a year or something, and then that means that it's going to be a good year. And, there's all these things about, the years when it didn't, when it was still coagulated, the years when it didn't liquefy was when COVID-19 started, or a volcano erupted, or, and that is another great example, because in terms of verifying a miracle, verifiably the event which is said to occur did occur, which is that the liquid contained inside that ampule, the substance contained inside that ampule did liquefy. So technically the miracle occurred. But then for me as a skeptic, learning about that, well, we don't know what's in there. I guess in the framing of this question, the verified version would be if we were allowed to study it and we somehow could prove that it was San Gennaro's blood and that it liquefies, we still wouldn't be able to verify that it's like the action of the man, the saint's spirit, causing that to happen as some sort of signal. The only way that could be a verified miracle, or the only way any of these really could be a verified miracle, is if the angel, spirit, God, whoever is responsible for it, showed up, was able to prove themselves and say, I caused this, here is the evidence. It's sort of a non-starter of a question. Forgive me for this answer going on for so long, but it's like kind of an in-depth question, which is kind of interesting to think about. To verify the miracle would essentially to require verifying God, saints, angels, spirits. And in that case, if it was truly verified, if somehow an angel appeared and could verify that it was an angel, I would probably then believe that that being did exist. So sort of yes, but mostly no. There's a comment here that has said this much more succinctly than me, which is, a miracle is not evidence of God. You would have to provide the connecting evidence in addition to the evidence for the miracle. That's what I'm saying. You'd have to connect it to a God, and then that God or whatever would have to verify that it was a God and it caused the miracle.
Number 3, and this is my final question.
It's okay, bro. Atheists can count.
If you're an atheist that cares about truth and thinks that we should proportion our beliefs to the evidence, But then you also think that we've got this to verify whether or not God exists through studying miracles. How many of the millions of miracle reports throughout history have you actually deeply investigated?
How many of the Americans... somebody sent me a book that they've written about verified miracles. So I'm about to do a much bigger dive on investigating miracles. But it's a bit like almost all... I'm going to say that because I haven't investigated every miracle ever reported. And obviously the further you go back, the less scientific understanding we had, the more things were attributed to miracles, which we can now easily explain using science. They're effectively all just hearsay. So it's a bit like me saying, well, how many of the thousands and thousands of reports of people seeing fairies have you actually properly investigated? Well, how much of that is worth my time? Because fairies aren't real. That's the equivalent here. The Gentle Christian has a question for atheists.
This is a question for atheists, agnostics, and people of other religions. What was it that caused you to reject Christianity or to reject the Bible? This isn't a judgment thing, I promise. I'm sure that there are plenty of valid, logical reasons that you guys have, but I just want to know them.
Well, that was a very politely asked question. And I want to say that because he asked in a very nice and compassionate way, so I want to try and answer as politely and compassionately as possible. The asking of the question, the framing of the question, belies a heavy Christian bias. Somebody could ask you with exactly the same compassion and curiosity and just genuine, like, I'm just asking, why have you rejected the Prophet Muhammad? And so on, based on various religions. So the assumption is that everybody knows about Jesus and the teachings of Jesus and that he is this important historical prophet and has had to actively reject him. That clearly speaks of someone who was born into Christianity, who had Christian parents, maybe went to a Christian school and just learned from birth that this is the prophet, he was born then, it's an important part of our history, we all just know and believe. Right? Everybody in this bubble knows and believes. So the people outside that must have rejected that rather than never having had that belief in the first place. Personally, I never had that belief. When I was a child, and, the vicar was in school telling us about the baby Jesus, the only thing I ever remember him saying, oh, doorbell. Guys, it's P.O. Box mail for me. It's P.O. Box. Look at all those stamps. Oh my gosh, I hope that wasn't really expensive to send. I really need to edit the video that I did opening some P.O. Box mail recently because I've already got more that I need to open. Oh my god. Okay. Well, that was a really nice interruption for me and a good opportunity to plug Emma Thorne Backstage, where I open my P.O. Box mail, amongst other things. So, oh my god, I've got to get back to my train of thought in my weird tangent brain after having get distracted. You have no idea how hard this is for me. So, it comes from this place of assuming that people learned of Jesus and just knew about that and accepted him as a historical figure and a prophet of God, and then had to actively reject him. Outside of the moments of just being taught by religious people that, yeah, Jesus was a thing. The great thing for me is that I went to a school that taught religious studies, which taught Christianity amongst other religions. It framed that as being a thing that people believe and not the truth, and these are other beliefs. These are a thing that people believe, and I don't believe that, because I wasn't raised to believe that, and I don't have any evidence to believe that. So I just don't. I never rejected Jesus. I just never had the belief in his word in the first place. So I hope that was a satisfactory answer, despite me stopping halfway through and getting confused and forgetting what I was talking about. I hope that was okay. Another really nice, polite... We are finding genuine questions by nice, polite people. We started off with the sarcastic chip-eating woman who is looking at me with, some sarcastic eyes right now. But things improved. Okay, these aren't all bad. Oh, no, not you. It's this guy. I've forgotten his name. Off the Curb Ministries. I've forgotten his name. The one with the cow story. He's an English evangelical and kind of hilarious. And he had that story about, we were actually chased by a cow. He's kind of stupid. I'm sorry to say it. As an evangelist, he's not one of the most compelling, but he is kind of funny. So I guess we'll listen to this Off the Curb Ministries. He really wants people to stitch this one. I presume because that gets... How do you make money on TikTok? I don't understand. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Atheist, I'm about to put you in a corner right now because I am going to ask you a very hard question and you will not be able to answer it.
Just ask the question, bro. Look, Ricky Gervais is sweating at this question. It's so impossible to answer.
I would be a very rich man if
I bet I know what the question's gonna be. I bet this is gonna be about the creation of the universe again. I bet you. And it's gonna be like, well, if you say that God didn't create the universe, then what did?
I got $1 for every time an atheist said these 3 words to me. Who made God? But let me flip that question back on you, Mr. Atheist. If you
Don't like you assuming that I'm a male. Don't like you assuming my gender there, off the curb, Mr. Atheist. He's definitely got a stereotypical view of what an atheist is in his head, and that view is obviously of somebody who is a man.
don't believe that God created you, the only other logical conclusion you can draw is that the universe created you. So if you believe that the universe...
My parents created me. It's not something I like to dwell on, it's not something I like to think about that much, but I know it to be factually true. My parents created me. And if you're looking grander scheme, evolution and natural selection created me. Primordial soup created me, you know. Chemical reactions created me.
The universe created you. Who created the universe?
Why does someone have to have created the universe? To pose the question who created the universe, you have to first show that someone created the universe. You haven't shown that, there's no need to answer the question. The reason nobody can answer this question is because it's a stupid question. If your question was better phrased as, how did the universe come to be? I would say, that's not my field of expertise. I believe there are some recent developments in scientific theories about the origin of the universe. I'd refer you to those and say that in general we don't have a direct answer, therefore we don't know. Part of being an atheist is being comfortable with the answer we don't know, because this is just God of the gaps, right? This is, I don't know the answer to that question and it fills me with a sense of existential dread, so I must plug the gap that is seeping dread with God. And then, all I have to do is believe in this one book, this set of instructions. Not everybody is like this, obviously, but the people that ask these kind of questions are like this, in my opinion. I am scared of not knowing the answer to that question, so it must be God. And if you must also be scared and not have and have plugged an answer into that question, right? No, I don't know. The creation of the universe was a long fucking time ago, bro. Like, I don't have any records from back then. So I'm comfortable with not knowing the answer to that question. I'm glad to see that Off the Curb's editing is just as insane and chaotic on TikTok as it is on YouTube. Manna Bay. Tag an atheist, please. I'm so tired of this question. Okay, so this is a Christian answering a question by atheists. It's a bit of a flipping of the script, but I'm interested, so let's listen.
God is real and just, like you guys claim. Then why is there poor people? Why is there famine? Why is there world hunger?
Because our governments have failed us. Because our social systems have failed us is the answer to those questions. But I get kind of what she's saying.
Why is there wars? Why are there so many bad things in this world and he's not putting a stop to it? So those questions were the topic of discussion of an atheist live that I happened to see yesterday, scrolling down my FYP. Of course, the lady that was asking all of these questions was an ex-Muslim, and absolutely no judgment. I just want to answer your question. Because y'all love to put the blame on God, even though y'all don't even believe he exists, but forget how disgusting...
Well, no, because the thing that people are saying is, how could there be this suffering if there was a just and loving God? It's not putting the blame on God. It's saying, this is one of the reasons I don't believe in God. Why did he create flesh-eating bacteria? Why did he create hornets? And mosquitoes that do nothing but spread disease?
Humans are, so let's break it down. So I'm just going to tell you what God did for us. God gave us enough land, enough animals, enough...
Well, that depends on who you ask. If the climate keeps going the direction it's going now, there is not going to be enough land for some people in some places. Coastal cities are gonna get dunked.
Vegetables, enough knowledge, and enough free will for all of us to live equally. God did not cause...
She's pissed, dude. She's really mad.
Hunger. We did. God did not cause wars. We did.
I just want to say, I agree with all of this. Like I said, my very first reaction to this was, yeah, these are man-made problems. I would argue that if you believe God created humans as they are, I guess this gets into a complicated discussion about original sin, but if God created man as he is, why didn't he make us good? Why did he create the concept of evil and suffering and greed? Like, why did he allow us to feel that? For a laugh? It just doesn't seem right to me.
God did not divide us by upper, middle, and lower class. We did. So to put the blame on God when he gave us everything we need to survive equally is ridiculous. And
I agree. I agree. Those are human complaints. However, as people in the comments are pointing out, what about natural disasters? What about sickness? Do you know how many children die every day from diseases, from cancers? That's not man-made.
another question was asked. They asked, if God was so just, astaghfirullah, why doesn't he put a stop to all of these things? Now let me ask you something. If God got himself involved, then where's the free will? God has given
Have you read the Bible? God loves getting involved. God was getting involved constantly for ages, and then he suddenly stopped getting involved, and now it's like, we have free will. Why would God get involved? Have you read the Bible? That's what he did. That's his whole thing, is getting involved. He'd pick a favourite person and say, you go and tell the people this, and then I'm going to send down a rain of frogs or whatever. He was always getting involved. Why is it crazy to ask, why is he not involved anymore? That's the real question. It's not that according to religious texts, right? It's not that according to Christianity, Islam, whatever, that God created us and then abstained and said, I've given you free will, consciousness, you're on your own, which would answer all of these questions in a more explanatory way. But you're saying that God created us, created everything, and was intimately involved in shaping the religion. The only way it makes sense is because the origin of this religion is from a polytheistic time with rival gods and rival tribes. So she's pointedly ignored the suffering that isn't directly man-made. And she was asking all of that while being, like, real furious. Trad West says, thoughts on atheism? And then we have this beautiful picture of an atheist. And the world's smartest man.
Talking about a theory of everything, the first question we have to establish, does God exist?
Yes.
Simple as
Yes.
that.
Well, it's the identity the reality has an identity. Okay? The identity is that as which something exists. Okay? Matter of fact, when you say the word reality, you're naming an identity. You're identifying something.
I'm smiling because your answer on this is so beautiful.
What? That didn't mean anything. God exists because reality has an identity? Those are just words. What does that mean?
It just reminds me of Moses at the burning bush. And Moses at the burning bush says, who shall I tell the people that you are? Talking to God. And God says, tell them I am that I am.
That's right.
I am identity itself. I'm being himself.
Exactly.
Okay. It's some sort of Descartes shit, like, I God, therefore I am? Like, that doesn't mean anything. Atheists, God is not real. World's smartest man. Let's not talk about how shady IQ is as a measure of intelligence and how flawed and stupid and racist and whatever. Yeah, but identity and reality. Therefore, Moses was real and talked to a bush. Stuart has 3 questions for atheists. A lot of them have 3 questions. I wonder if this might be an engagement thing. Because when I've looked before at, like, how to go viral stuff, a lot of them use lists. Like, 10 things, 3 things. A lot of them say lists is a good way to get, like, video engagement. So I wonder if that's just what this is. Let's see what Stuart wants to know.
Questions I honestly have for atheists. Not gotcha questions whatsoever. Just would love the answer to help me.
Appreciate you. Since we've just had a couple of really annoying and stupid gotcha questions. This is nice. We're like going from like genuine curious person to stupid annoying person to genuine curious person. Isn't this like a beautiful insight into the human condition?
In my own spiritual journey. 1 would be, do you believe that God does not exist? 2 would be,
do you believe that God does not exist? That's a very complicated question because you would have to define God. And what a lot of people define as God is essentially the I don't know that may or may not have been around at the start of the universe. In that very spurious sense, I would have to say, no, I don't know. I don't believe that there is no God. In that sense, I would be agnostic. But when most people are talking about God, we have this predefined deistic, definition of what it means to be a God. And based on that actual, practical, real life, like, meaning that people actually associate with God, yes, I do not believe. Yes, I believe that there is no God, because we have a lovely long history and a beautiful history of scientific development, and everything that has in the past been used as evidence for God has in fact come to be explained by science, and therefore there is no evidence. So, no. Yes? The question was phrased in a very confusing way. It did feel a little bit gotcha in the way it was phrased, because I don't think it matters that much. I think arguing over like agnosticism versus atheism and the different definitions of that, which is something that happens a lot whenever we talk about skepticism in general, which is why I prefer to refer to it as skepticism. I think there's no point in that. On an evidentiary basis, when we're talking about how we live our lives, when we're talking about our different cultures and stuff, does it matter whether you believe that there is no God or you believe that there might be, but you don't have any faith in the gods that we currently acknowledge? You know, like, I think that's sort of a redundant waste of time, and is pretty much just used as a gotcha by anti-atheists. Question 2.
An evidentialist, so do you follow the evidence where it leads to get to this belief?
An evidentialist? That's not a thing, Stuart. An evidentialist is not a thing, so I'm not it. This is a bit like creationists calling people who follow mainstream science evolutionists. That's not a real word. Again, because he's using made-up evangelist language, still not totally believing the whole gotcha thing. Maybe he is being sincere, but he has been brought up in a very evangelist Christian way that is kind of poisoning his questioning, which is a shame. Do I follow the evidence for what I believe? Yes.
And then thirdly, if you believe that God does not exist and you are an evidentialist, what is...
There's no such thing as an evidential, and the way that... So he's stacked two conspicuously gotcha-y phrased questions on top of each other and then used the answers to those to pose the third question. I am strongly disbelieving his original statement that this is just a sincere question, there's no gotcha about it.
This evidence, the preponderance of it, that leads to this great belief. So 3 questions I honestly... And you are an evidentialist. What is this evidence, the preponderance of it, that leads to this great belief?
So he's saying, if you believe that there is no God, and you follow the evidence, what is the evidence you followed to believe that there is no God? That's kind of a classic uno reverso of the burden of proof. The burden is on you to prove that there is a God. I also believe that there is no invisible pink unicorn. While I would say that I do follow the evidence for most of my life, the evidence is that there is no evidence. The evidence is the complete lack of evidence. You need evidence to prove something that is, not to prove that something isn't. If you don't believe that this Keropi hairbrush used to be a giant panda that got transformed, what is the evidence that led you to that belief? Do you see how stupid that is? Disappointing, Stuart. Really disappointing. Michael, a question for atheists.
I have a question for atheists. If you're an atheist and you don't believe in any kind of God or creator, it seems to me you must believe one of 2 things. Either A...
There's your first mistake, my friend. It seems to me you must believe... Whoa now! The only facts and knowledge that you have is that I don't believe in any God. Any assumptions you make after that are on you, my friend, not us. Great expression that I've paused on.
We've always been here, the universe has always existed, and it always will. Or that the universe perhaps created itself out of nothing, which according to modern physics is actually sort of possible. There's a good book on this subject. It's called A Universe from Nothing by Lawrence Krauss. What do you believe?
Why did he get so close at the end? He was like, oh, what do you believe? I don't know. It's not a field of science that I'm an expert in. It's not something that I particularly often read about. I haven't studied the origins of the universe that much because I'm not a scientist, and so my life largely revolves around other things. You don't have to believe one or the other of those things, just like you don't have to believe one or the other things about the pH level across the various oceans. If that's not your field of expertise, you don't have to have an opinion on something that you're not an expert on. Making any assumption beyond you don't believe in a god is the problem with that question. So I don't know is the answer. Official Ruvim. Christian content! Fire emoji. Okay, this has music in the background, so I guess we're just gonna have to mute this. Dear atheists, how do you hate someone you say doesn't exist? I don't. Next question. Templar Martin has posted a meme. Is he using pictures of himself in the meme? Are you allowed to do that? Could I do that? Why am I not a meme? Who designed this house? Atheist said, an architect. Who designed the universe? Atheist said, no one. Austin answered this one, my dude. No, that's not what atheists say. Some scientists might believe that the universe came to exist spontaneously. Evidently, there's a book I should read on the topic if I'm going to have to keep answering this question, but that's not what atheists believe. And once again, we have evidence for how houses are built. We have evidence for architects existing. We do not have evidence for God creating the universe. Like, we could probably find out the name of the architect. I don't really understand this as a TikTok thing, but I guess I don't understand TikTok in general. So we have to pause this to see the questions, because instead of asking them, they've just printed them on screen as text. What will you do if you find out that you were wrong all along? About what, specifically? About theism? About there not being a deity? What can I do? I mean, it really depends on the outcome. What will you do if you find out God is real? Which one? There's loads! What will you do if you have to be accountable to God one day? Again, it really fucking depends. Which God? The specific God that you believe in? I'd have to find out a lot about your specific beliefs to know. What will you do if you find out that heaven and hell is real? The answer to all of these questions is nothing, because I guess at this point I'm dead, right? So this one person in the comments makes a very good point. Not panic, since I plan to be a good person the rest of my life, because whether you get into heaven or not should be based on morals and not belief, and you shouldn't need a book to have good morals. Exactly. I'm just gonna continue following my own moral compass, not base it arbitrarily on whether or not I will be punished for eternity. A question to atheists by Go With Jordan. I haven't had a solid answer yet. Maybe we can turn things around for him.
I have a question for the atheists. If there is no God, where did the laws of nature and the laws of logic come from? We know man discovered them, but where did they come from?
Where did the laws of nature and the laws of logic come from? Oh gosh, no wonder he's never had an answer. There's a comment that says, me. I made the laws of nature. What do you mean, where did they come from? The laws of nature as in the laws of reality? Like, the only reason we exist and the fundamental laws of nature exist in this universe is because this is the only universe that we could exist in. The laws of nature have to be a certain way to facilitate life and us. And so we are. And so this is us. The laws of logic? If there were laws of logic that all of us follow, most of these videos wouldn't exist. That was draining. There were, like, a couple of genuinely curious questions, people wanting to engage and understand people's views better. It was mostly people asking redundant, pointless, illogical questions that have been asked a million times, gotcha questions, just for the sake of engagement. Hey, it provides entertainment for us and content for me, so who am I to complain? Thank God the Americans have this app for at least another 90 days. I do like having these kind of conversations for the sake of the couple of people that are genuinely curious. Even the really obvious, repetitive, stupid questions or like theological arguments that have been answered and debunked many, many times, and you could find that out on Google if you wanted to. Even then, there is a benefit in maybe answering that for somebody who has just never heard it before. You know, somebody who isn't maybe that internet literate or media literate or whatever. You know, there can be some benefit to that. And the stupid, annoying ones are at least fun to riff on. And at least we found out that my friend the cow tamer is on TikTok. Any of you who are religious and you have genuine burning questions or silly questions for atheists, leave them down below. I think it'll also be interesting if any skeptics, atheists, agnostics have questions for religious people. You leave those down below too. Basically, I want all of you to leave comments for the algorithm. But don't be mean. Don't be mean. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Unless someone is rude and stinky to you. and then you let them have it. Thank you very much for watching. Do give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing if you haven't already so you don't miss future videos. If you like what I do here and you would like to support this channel, you can become a channel member. You get comment priority and some silly little emotes. Follow me at Little Duck Gaming for regular video game content. It's a lot of fun. I post the most regularly over there. You can also follow me on Twitch at Emma Little Duck for live engagement. Again, I will be playing video games and you can say hi. And what are you doing? And put on a hat. You can have all sorts of fun over there. The best way to support this channel is via the Patreon. With that, I must give a big old thank you and a shout out to my giant chickens and colossal quackers over on Patreon. Especially Conla. God damn it, Conla. Most importantly, have yourselves a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.